Rachel Sennis with City TV, and welcome to Inside Santa Barbara, the city's only news magazine show. We bring you up to date on the city's most significant issues, projects, and events. Today we are coming to you from De La Guerra Plaza, and here you can enjoy the Mercado and music and dance in celebration of the 84th Old Spanish Days Fiesta. It is 5 days of celebrating Santa Barbara's Spanish heritage, and we'll tell you more about this year's fiesta later on in the show. But first, our top story. According to an unofficial study completed in January 2006, homelessness cost the city of Santa Barbara between $600,000 to $700,000 per year for police and fire, public works, parks and recreation, and library services. This does not include hospital and jail costs. There's a nationwide effort to end chronic homelessness. Now, Santa Barbara is joining in on this effort through its local 10-year plan called Bringing Our Community Home. Santa Barbara's beautiful ocean and mountain views, classic architecture, and mild climate. Many people call it paradise. But no matter where you live, if you're without a home, it can be far from heaven.
The ground is cold at night. It's like a heat sink. It just draws the heat right out of your body.
Well, I know it's like the jungle we call, you know what I mean? You know, it's like in the bushes and where nobody can see us.
Really, really scared. I didn't know if I was going to make it. I never knew from one day to the next how it was going to go.
Or how it was going to end. Every year, about 22 homeless people die in Santa Barbara. The rest must survive the stereotype.
I'd hear a lot of people, oh, look at those homeless people over there. Why don't they get a job?
Ken Williams has spent many years on the streets of Santa Barbara helping the homeless.
When are you supposed to have the stitches out? You got to get those stitches out.
He says to start to address the homelessness issue, we have to stop the stereotype.
You put up a stereotype. This is the one person that represents homelessness. Then you remember that one bad encounter you had, and then also all homeless people are really bad.
Some homeless people face life circumstances like the loss of a job, a personal injury, or financial problems. Others suffer from depression, anxiety, or post-traumatic stress disorder and turn to alcohol or drugs until it's impossible to work or pay mortgage or rent. Steve moved from New Jersey to Santa Barbara in the 60s. He didn't fit in here and eventually fell into the wrong crowd. After years of substance abuse and running from the law, a train accident cost him his leg and almost his life. He went from staying in a hospital to a shelter.
Basically, what happened was they kept telling me, we're going to get you into a care home. Don't worry. Don't worry, don't worry, don't worry. We won't put you on the streets. Don't worry. They released me to the shelter.
Ty spent 3 years living in her car in a parking lot here in Santa Barbara.
I had a home in Santa Clarita, a single mom, and after 20 years I lost my job. And then 6 months later I was hit as a pedestrian. It took about 5 years to go to court, and I didn't have any medical insurance at the time because I had lost my job. And I lost my house within like 6-7 months, and they had a small shelter there, and they closed it down after 2 summers. So I was donated a car, and thank God, because I don't know what else I would have done.
Peter was an industrial engineer here in town. He lived in his car in Isla Vista.
Well, I actually moved to Santa Barbara in about 1985 or so, and I've lived and worked here at a number of companies that aren't here anymore. TechNet, Infomag, and around 1990 became unemployed, and rather than leave the area, I wanted to stay here. Well, of course, my money ran out, and so I have a Datsun 280Z, and I knew about Isla Vista as being a place where they have food programs, food giveaway programs, and free lunch programs and things like that. So I sort of migrated out there.
Mark moved here from Boston. He lived on the streets of Santa Barbara.
I was in Santa Barbara near the fig tree, and to be honest with you, that's when I had a big drinking problem. And I was jaywalking, and before they had the overpass, there, and I wasn't really paying attention. I seen a car come out. I was trying to run, and I got hit by a car, and I ripped 3 ligaments. I just thank God I still have my leg here.
Although each of their stories are unique, the paths of these 4 people converged here at El Carrillo on the 15th of September, 2006. A peaceful place, a serene sanctuary. El Carrillo is permanent supportive housing and is intended to help people who have been challenged by homelessness. 61 254 square foot studio apartments with laundry facilities, community rooms, and support resources right on site. For these residents, it all seemed too good to be true.
I mean, something that makes you feel so good because you're not on the streets anymore. You don't be staying here, sleeping here, and this and that, you know. So it's rough out there. You know, now I know I have a place to come home to, go to work every day.
As soon as we saw the insides, everyone started running around like little school children in the first day of school. And we all were saying, oh, I want this unit, I want this one, I want to, you know, because we were moving into an empty building.
I had a key to my own place, and I can shut the door. And if I wanted to be happy, I could be happy. If I wanted to cry, because when I was living in my car, if I was crying, people were always walking past. I didn't have curtains on my window.
And for Steve, who as a teenager never fit in, finally a chance to have a circle of friends who have a lot in common.
I was just completely blown away that the city had done such a great job and really did fill it up with people who really needed to be here. And I came with a lot of people that I'd been on the streets with, I'd been in the shelters with, and it was really neat to see them here too.
El Carrillo is the first project of its kind in Santa Barbara County, and the first to be completed under the county's 10-year plan to end chronic homelessness.
The 10-year plan planning process was out of the federal government, their desire to try to really deal with the issue of chronic homelessness. About 10% of the people that are homeless are considered chronic, meaning they are without a home for over a year, or they have, I believe it's 4 episodes of homelessness during a given year.
Priorities of the 10-year plan include preventing homelessness, moving people rapidly from the streets to housing, and building the public and political will to end homelessness. Santa Barbara County's 10-year plan is called Bringing Our Community Home. Its goal is to implement a practical solution to a costly problem.
Take them off the streets in the condition that they're in, stabilize them in a unit, and then bring those services that are unique to that individual to them.
350 communities have 10-year plans. So, in fact, Santa Barbara's partnered with a national conspiracy to bring an end to a moral and spiritual wrong.
Recently, Philip Mangano, the executive director of the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness, came to town to support Santa Barbara County's 10-year plan. He toured permanent and supportive housing like El Carrillo and the Mental Health Association's Building Hope. Building Hope, once completed, will have 51 units of affordable housing for mental health clients and low-income downtown workers. Mangano believes in moving beyond traditional shelters and soup kitchens.
Homeless people are often randomly ricocheting through very expensive health and law enforcement systems in the emergency room of hospitals, in the acute side of substance abuse and mental health programs, police and firefighter interventions, court and incarceration costs. When you add all of those up, and we've seen this in 65 different cost studies around our country, and you're doing one here in Santa Barbara, what you'll discover is the cost of their random ricocheting in health and law enforcement systems is more expensive than solving their homelessness by providing a place to live and the support services that people need.
According to Roger Haru's report on chronic homelessness services in the county of Santa Barbara in February 2006, a day at the Santa Barbara County Jail costs $86, a private health care facility $800. A hospital bed costs $1,600 per day. Compare those numbers to permanent supportive housing, which costs $28 per day.
Okay, do you need any help getting a job?
Officer Bob Casey patrols the streets of Santa Barbara every day.
How you doing, Charlie? Could I talk to you a second?
He says he receives about 6 to 7 calls daily related to homeless people with mental illnesses. Some of those are repeat calls on the same person.
The service-resistant mentally ill that we deal with generate a lot of calls for service. They end up getting arrested for alcoholism. Booking them into jail and housing them at the jail and going to court is way more expensive than getting these people assistance connected with mental health or counseling, alcohol, and drug abuse, and housing them.
And many say that the individual needs of homeless people are not met while behind bars. Duncan Wright, one of 2 on-site counselors at El Carrillo, says that their support services meet all those different challenges.
We are dealing with basic rehabilitation skills, which means learning to live in a community with a roof over your head, with managing your money, with being healthy, with connecting with other support services, medical, psychiatric, financial, and so on, vocational, getting people back to work or back to education. We also provide counseling for recovery, for anxiety or depression or PTSD. We provide community counseling for neighbors to get along with each other.
But that means homeless individuals have to want the help in order to get it.
Some people are so used to being in the streets and they've been there so long, or they're scared to ask, or they just get really like mental issues with themselves. You know what I mean? And I speak to a lot of people still out in the streets, and then I see them like, well, you can get housing and I can help you go down. Oh, no, I'm not ready. When you be ready, when you roll over. That's how I look at it, serious. And I know guys in their 30s, 20s, 40s, you got to want, just like if you want to do AA, if you want to do this, you got to want it.
There's a lot of people who may not be ready for help. There's issues beyond just simply providing a house for them, because I've seen countless times where they provide someone a house, an apartment, and they're not ready for it, so they mess it up and have it taken away from them. That happens a great deal. The cycle of homelessness is not something that has a simple cure to it.
There's also the matter of money.
I would say the Bush administration has done a good job in advancing the concept of a 10-year plan and getting us all thinking about the planning that's necessary. Unfortunately, it has not delivered on the dollar side, dollars that I think are necessary to make more projects like El Carrillo happen. There's a lot of competing interests for the federal dollar, but if anything, what's happened recently is the foreclosure crisis at least has our Congress and the current administration talking about housing for the first time.
We don't know what the politics are going to be in Washington after November. There is enough evidence now, solid studies, that economics will drive this.
The governing board of the 10-year plan is in the process of identifying what it will cost to fund housing and supportive services needed to implement bringing our community home. You may be asking why housing is being developed for the homeless when affordable housing in Santa Barbara is an issue for many people, not just the chronically homeless. But proponents of the 10-year plan say that the amount of resources like tax dollars and emergency room visits required to keep homeless people alive on the streets is significant, and that investing in permanent supportive housing isn't only the humane thing to do, but the economical thing to do, a cost-saving measure that will pay for itself over time. Hi, Robert. So while the dialogue about the 10-year plan continues, so too does the conversation between neighbors at El Carrillo. Many of them realize the challenges of the 10-year plan, but say Santa Barbara's efforts should be recognized.
I do applaud Santa Barbara's effort, because my first thought was that they're doing more than their share. I think the city has done proportionally a wonderful job. To be able to build a facility like this in an area that's already developed, and to be able to provide so many brand new apartments in a place where housing is an issue, I think they've gone the extra mile.
Many people here at El Carrillo are for the first time in a long time making plans for the future, while others are just taking it one step at a time.
There's no doubt in my mind that if it weren't for El Carrillo, I wouldn't even like to think about where I might be today.
So they do start to think in terms of what's out there in the world for me rather than, you know, how am I going to, you know, survive living on the street corner.
I'm just trying to get myself back together again. You know, from being homeless for 3 years, you know, it takes a toll on you, and you can get post-traumatic stress, and so it takes you a little while.
Everything's all right. I just one day at a time, 1 hour at a time. That's all you can do in life. But I hope my life just gets a little bit better.
A little bit better for those at El Carrillo, in a sense their own paradise in Santa Barbara, a place to call home. The City Council Subcommittee on Homelessness and Community Relations will be holding a series of public meetings in the next several months. Log on to our website, citytv18.com, for all the details. Well, election time is approaching, and come November 4th, the citizens of Santa Barbara will cast their votes. Up next, we'll provide you information on one local measure. It's called Measure G. When voters cast their ballots, one measure they will be asked to vote on is Measure G, a reduction and modernization of the utility users tax.
It is a 6% tax on 6 of the utilities that customers get, and that's electric, natural gas, water, trash or refuse, cable TV, and telephone. And it's a tax that the city has had in place in one form or another since 1970.
The revenue from this tax is used for city services. Let's take a look at the revenue generated from the Utility Users Tax, or UUT, in fiscal year 2008. Electric, about $4.1 million. Telephone, $4.1 million. Water, $1.6 million. Gas, $1.5 million. Cable TV, $1.3 million, and trash about $1 million. By these numbers, you can see that the UUT totals a little over $13 million in revenue. For this November's ballot, voters will be asked to decide specifically on the telecommunications and video portion of the UUT, which currently applies to telephone and cable TV.
It's important to point out that the only portion of the utility tax that we are revisiting at the current time is the portion that applies to telephone and cable TV, collectively known these days as telecommunications.
Revenue from the telecommunications part of the utility users tax is $4.1 million. For video, $1.3 million, which totals about $5.4 million. 50% of this revenue goes to the general fund, which supports city services. This includes public safety, like police and fire. Other city services include parks and recreation. This supports community services like recreation programs, the preservation of open space, and maintenance of city parks. The other half goes to the Streets Fund, which includes the maintenance and repair of city streets and roads. This represents over 14% of total ongoing streets funding. The history of the telecommunications tax may help voters understand why it is on this November's ballot. The city's telecommunications tax was written in 1970. Santa Barbara's ordinance generally follows the federal excise tax, which was written for 1960 communications technologies. So now it is time to revisit and modernize the tax.
By modernizing it, it is possible that certain services that are now not taxable would become taxable under the new proposed ordinance. An example of that would be voice over internet protocol telephone, and because of that, the council decided to lower the tax rate because the goal of the city is not to generate additional revenue, but only to generate the same amount of revenue that we currently receive, to make it, as it were, revenue neutral.
This means Measure G will actually reduce the tax rate from 6% to 5.75% for all Santa Barbara City residents. The telecommunications UUT will include cell phones, cable TV, and other video services. Measure G also adds international and interstate phone calls. The current ordinance does not include these services. Internet access will not be taxed. Federal law says that internet services are not taxable. These internet services include Wi-Fi access, email, and digital downloads like music, games, and ringtones.
The council directed that it be made very clear that any charges for internet access, the monthly charge that you may pay to your telephone or cable company for internet access, will not be taxed. It will not be subject to the city's utility tax. It is not now, and it would not be under the new ordinance. Right now, that's precluded by federal law, but that federal law is a temporary law and will expire in about 5 years unless Congress renews it. But the City Council wanted it to be very clear that regardless of what the federal law says, our ordinance will not tax internet access.
Also, Measure G does not apply to water, gas, electricity, or refuse users tax. The city isn't alone when it comes to this tax. More than 150 cities in California have a UUT. Over the past couple of years, 26 cities have successfully modernized their telecommunications tax by voter approval. Also, individuals with incomes less than $17,947 are exempt from paying the city's UUT on all utilities. You can contact the Finance Department to apply for an exemption at 564-5334. And for more information on Measure G, go to the city's website, santabarbaraca.gov, and click on the quick link, Measure G. Up next, we're going to show you a new technology the Public Works Department is using that will save the city money by using computing power instead of heavy equipment. Samantha Gonzalez has the story.
Santa Barbara's sewer system has come a long way since it was first installed in the 1870s. Today, the system is comprised of 277 miles of sewer mains and 350 miles of private laterals. Up until recently, when the Public Works Department wanted to know the condition of a particular stretch of sewer line, they would have to inspect and dig.
11:35.
Now, an innovative technology is replacing excavation with computation. It's called sewer modeling, and it's proving to be much more efficient than the older methods.
Unlike a traffic network where you can see where the bottlenecks are and take care of them, in a wastewater piping system underground, we can't see where they are. We are looking at a plan view of the sewer collection system, and those lines that are shown in blue are the pipelines that go all the way to the plant.
This program allows wastewater staff to look at and regulate the flow in city pipes, then spot deficiencies in the system. Without digging a single shovelful, sewer modeling enables staff to determine which pipes need full replacement or just rehabilitation. Rehabilitation is a process that improves the inside of the pipe without having to dig it up. This technology not only reduces infiltration, it also cuts down on costs.
The ultimate goal, again, is to make sure that our taxpayers' dollars are spent wisely.
We've had some work done on the Mission Creek Cabrillo Boulevard Bridge, and at that time we were thinking that possibly we should upgrade the pipe, because if there's a bridge expansion, that's a good time to make upgrades. But we modeled the system and realized that we don't need to upgrade that pipe. So upgrading a whole trunk line along the beach on Cabrillo Boulevard would have cost several $million.
Just to make sure and confirm elevations, the city surveying crew went out in the field, and at critical locations, they measured flows. They measured actually pipe rim elevations and invert elevations. So there's a lot of information. It took a long time, but now we are where we can make full use of all that effort.
The modeling program is also able to test the capability of proposed improvements before they are installed, saving even more time and money. Well, in addition to music and dance at De La Guerra Plaza, the Fiesta Historical Parade is one of the largest equestrian parades in the United States. The city of Santa Barbara has been an annual sponsor of Fiesta since the first one in 1924. Well, if high energy costs have thrown you onto the conservation bandwagon, this next segment is just for you. Chris Bell shows us some easy and inexpensive ways to save resources, both yours and the planet.
Now that sustainability has made its way into popular culture, there's no shortage of innovative technologies that can help you green up your life. Yet among all the cool gadgets and whiz-bang inventions, the easiest and least expensive way to go green remains conservation.
Conservation is not using energy, essentially. It's the ability to use less energy. And then there's also energy efficiency, is when you need to use something, you use it more efficiently.
And while conservation may not be as sexy as solar panels or as hip as hybrids, it's a lot cheaper, and it offers a host of other benefits.
Conservation really helps Edison save costs. The less our customers use, the fewer power plants or generation is needed, and that is the cheapest thing to do. Also, our state continues to grow in population and more power is needed, and we worry about supply sometimes. So the more that we can shed in usage, the more sure our power supply is.
In a typical building, the lion's share of energy goes to space heating and cooling. But if you look at where that goes, a good portion goes right out the window, literally. That's where the low-hanging fruit of conservation lies. The first thing to do is to find out where your leaks are. You can hire a professional to do a home energy audit, or you can do a simplified version yourself. You can go to your windows and see if they rattle. If they do, you likely have a leak. You can inspect the framing around it. If you have any daylight coming through, you likely have a leak there too. If you're having trouble locating leaks, you can do a basic version of a home pressurization test. To do that, you simply close all the windows in the house, turn off all combustion devices, stove, water heater, and then turn all the vents on, bathroom vents too. Then you can use something like incense around your windows and doors and see if the smoke moves anywhere. If you have any movement of the smoke coming towards you, you likely have a leak. On the outside of your house, inspect all areas where different building materials meet, including all exterior corners, where siding and chimneys meet, and areas where the foundation and the bottom of exterior brick or siding meet. Stopping leakage is simple and easy. Expanding foam, caulk, or a little insulation can plug most of the leaks you'll find. You can also apply inexpensive weather stripping to leaky doors and windows. If you have electronics in your home, you likely also have a vampire. This kind of vampire sucks electricity or idle current even when it's off.
There's standby modes in a lot of equipment that can also draw, power even though it's in a low power mode. So it's better to find a way to completely turn these devices off if you can, if you're not using them.
Luckily, it's easy to kill that kind of vampire. For electronics, you can plug them into a power strip. And when you turn the power off to the power strip, it cuts off all the power to the devices completely. For a situation like this, where it's connected to your TV, it's not that convenient. Enter the Smart Strip. This type of new surge protector has a control outlet. And when you turn the power off to that device, say it's your TV, it cuts the power off to all the rest of the devices. Now, for those devices that you don't want to turn all the power off completely, say like a satellite receiver, it does have an always-on outlet. While this device costs a little more than a typical surge protector, the manufacturer says it can pay for itself in saved electricity in less than a year.
Weatherizing your home can reduce heating and cooling bills from 10 to 30%. To learn more about conservation techniques, go to our website, citytv18.com. Well, that does it for this month's episode of Inside Santa Barbara and our time here at the Old Spanish Days Fiesta festivities. Next time, we'll take you somewhere new and keep you up to date about other stories happening inside Santa Barbara. If you have any questions or comments about our show, give us a call at City TV at 564-5311. You can also watch us online at citytv18.com. I'm your host, Rachel Senes, and remember to get involved inside Santa Barbara.